this is going to be an introduction into uh, Photoshop and how to use the tools. And you're going to create an image, but you'll do one with me, and then later you'll do one on your own. Okay. And this just basically gives you a chance to explore and to try to understand Photoshop a little bit and how it works, where things are located at, what some of the tools do, and what you can do with it. Okay. So first off, we need to spend some time looking at the user interface here. Whenever you create an image, it's called a canvas. Essentially, whenever you start, um, over here you got your toolbox. You got all these different tools right here. Under each tool, there is a little arrow right there. You can click and hold on this and it will expand to another tool or show you the tools that are kind of underneath. And also you might have little quick command letters as you hover over it. I'm not actually in Photoshop right now, so it's not doing that. So this is your toolbox. This is your menu bar. This is your options bar, which is all in green. As you see, this tool right here is selected, and therefore that's the tool that's represented here. Every time you click on one of these other tools, this bar changes the option bar for that tool. Okay. Over here, your panels. In your panels, you'll find really important your layers. Okay. Something really important that you'll need to get familiar with. Okay, so let's just get into Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and open that real quick. I can't see it right now because I got stuff on my computer here. So I'm going to click on the icon, Photoshop. All right, and so this is what opened up. And okay, so notice there's no canvas right now. That's because we haven't created one. So we're going to go to File and go to New. Okay, name. Let's do this one. Photoshop practice. And then we always need to put our name on it. Okay. So last name. So first name, middle, first initial, then last name. Okay. And that's the way we're going to always turn in things. Always put your name somewhere on the end of the file. Okay. All right. So size wise, this actually came up the size that I do want it. I think it's because I was just practicing this, and so those parameters stayed in there. So the width of 10 inches, height of 8 inches, resolution of 300. Just to show you, you could end up with something other than inches if it's showing up differently on your screen. You could have centimeters, millimeters, pixels. I often see pixels sometimes, and you see how that number jumped greatly, right? We do want inches. Make sure it's on inches, 10 inches wide, 8 inches tall, and then we're going to resolution of 300. Everything else should be kind of pretty much the same, the RGB, transparent, and so forth. Okay, so we're going to click OK. So now you can see we have a canvas. We actually have a layer over here now. Okay. Now, because this is represented as checkerboard, that means it's a transparent layer. And notice over here the little thumbnail on the layer of this canvas, all right, this layer, okay? So first off, we can do is I want to show you again, if I come over here and hover over one of these tools, how it shows up the name and also the quick command. So the quick command is L. So if I click on L on my keyboard, notice how that now got selected and that tool is up there. If I come down here to the brush tool, hover over that, the quick command is B. So I'm going to click B on my keyboard, and now the brush tool has been selected and it's up there. So quick commands can really save you some time from having to go over here and click. on the side, something you might want to get familiar with. Let me just kind of click and hold for a second, then let off on my trackpad, and look what happens. So expanding these other tools, right? That's what I was talking about. So I could select any number of these other tools. So up under here, right now is on the gradient tool, and then also we have the paint bucket tool underneath there too. So if I click on the paint bucket tool, it replaces the gradient tool and it becomes the one on top. If I click and hold again, now we got the gradient tool exposed. I can click on that and go back to the gradient tool. Okay. Other things we should familiarize ourselves with is down here, we got foreground and background color. This one on top is foreground color. Okay. This one back here is background color. Now I can switch these two colors with this little bent arrow right here, and it can alternate and switch those colors. Whichever color on top is the one that's going to be selected. So if I click the background color, now, so if I wanted to use that color, I'd need to put it on top. All right, so let me get to, I'm just gonna use the brush tool as an example. All right, okay, never mind. So I'm sort of playing around here too, okay? Just getting familiar with being able to toggle back and forth. Now what popped up when you clicked on that color is this, it's called the color picker. And the color picker, you can select anywhere on here, and notice how that color shows up over here. That was the original color, right? And now if I select that, now it becomes the color that's represented down in the foreground color, okay? It's also up here in this color panel, and you can change things such as where on the color spectrum it is, and the saturation level, and also the how dark it is, okay? All right, so let's just get into, first of all, trying to fill in a background area with a color, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the bucket tool. Okay, now this is the gradient tool. I'm going to switch it to the bucket tool. You may already have the bucket tool selected. Now if I come over to here and I click on this area, it's just going to turn it to the color that's in the foreground color area. Okay. Now that is one option, to do it all one solid color, or I can go to the gradient tool, click on that, and then what I'm doing is I'm going to click, hold, and drag on the trackpad, and then release. And then it will create a gradient. Now, that gradient can be changed by up here. Notice this is the gradient tool, so therefore there are the options for the gradient tool right here. This is the type of gradient that we have selected right here, right now. Now this one is the radial. So if I click and drag on that, it's going to give me a sort of radial, kind of a center sunburst kind of look to it. And the longer I click and hold and expand, that's the bigger that radial gradient is going to get. Now I've got some other ones up here you can play with. I think this one's a diamond. Okay, so you get to play with that. You know, maybe that's the way you want your background to look. Okay. Right now it's a little saturated for me. I'm gonna bring the saturation down a little bit on that orange color. And I think I'm gonna do the same for the red color. I'm just going, this S right here, I'm just going to bring it down just a little bit. And now I'm going to try that gradient again and see what that does. Okay, so those are a little desaturated now, not as saturated and harsh to look at. So you make your background however you want to. If you want to use the fill bucket, whoops, oh, that's interesting. Filled in only that area. Now, this did something I didn't expect. So what do I do? How do I get back? How do I undo that? Well, on the keyboard, you need to get familiar with the Command and Z. That's going to take back one step, okay? If I Command Option Z, that's going to take me back another step, okay? So anytime you do Command Z or Command Option Z, Command Z will only go back one step, okay? It'll actually redo as well, okay? So it kind of will undo and redo if you keep pressing Command Z. Command Option Z will take you back multiple steps, however many times you click that. So let's try that. I'm going to click Command Option Z multiple times and see how it goes back through everything I've been doing. Okay, that was Command Option Z. Okay. So let's get back. Let me do the gradient one more time. I do want a gradient background. Okay. So I feel pretty good with that. Now, I think what happened earlier when I went to use the paint bucket tool, it only wants to fill in an area that's sort of defined. So somehow it defined that middle of that gradient as an area that it could fill in. Okay, it needs a certain parameter border. Okay, so I'll just demonstrate that again. So it just defined that whole side as an area to fill in. So that's actually looking pretty cool. But those designs can be accidental sometimes. So I'm going to keep that. All right. You decide however you want to do your initial background in terms of the full color. Okay. So let's go on to another tool. We want to make some shapes on here. Okay. So what we need to do is we do not want to work on this layer. Okay. We do not want to work on this layer because who knows, we might want to change it. We might want to go back and do something different, right? Once I'm getting into my design and kind of seeing how things are going, right? And that's what's nice about Photoshop. You can work in layers. So down here in the bottom right hand corner, you get the square with this little turned up corner. If I click on that, that's going to give me a new layer. Okay. Now you can name these layers. Okay. If I double click on layer 1, I could name that background. Okay. So you can name all your layers just so you can kind of keep them organized. Now, here's a thing though. If I go to work on this, I'm actually now going to be working on my background layer because my background layer is selected. Remember, I don't want to work on my background layer. That's why I created a new layer. So I got to click on this layer, make it highlight and select. It's got the little white line around the thumbnail, and also it's kind of a little shade lighter, and therefore that means that layer is selected, right? So just like as if I went over here and selected the eraser tool, right? I came over here and I went to erase. It's not going to erase anything. There's nothing to erase. There's nothing on that layer. If I click on the background layer, I go to erase. Notice how it's now exposing, and it's also showing me where on there is basically a smaller image of what I just created, right? So I don't want to do that. I'm going to go back to Command Z. I just want to demonstrate that for you, how important it is to be on the correct layer. Okay, so I am on the correct layer. So let's start creating some shapes. Okay, let's do some basic shapes. Down here you have a shape tool, and if I select that right now, it's just going to be this kind of elliptical tool. If I hold and click, I got my rectangle, rounded rectangle, ellipse tool, polygon, line, custom shape tool. Okay, let's just stick to the basics and do the rectangle right now. Okay, now if I come over here and I click and I drag, actually it might not show up. Okay, the reason being is because when I look up here at my fill color for that shape, it looks like it's red, and it might be the same red as what's right there. So I need to change that. So if I click on that, now I get to use color menu up. Let's find something different. Let's do kind of a green. That's going to be pretty contrasty. So let's do that. Stroke is actually kind of a outline that would be around it. And this is how big that outline would be. It would be 0.34 points. Now I can change the size of that with this little slider, right? Which I'll show you what a stroke looks like here in just a moment. But let's make it a different color. Let's make it kind of this pink color. That's gonna be, nah, that's not really good. Let's go with just a darker green. No, let's do this kind of burgundy. Okay, we'll go with that. So let's come down here and make a shape. So I'm going to click and drag. Now, if I go outwards like that, it's just going to make whatever kind of rectangle I want to make. So let's do that. Okay. So it made my green shape. Doesn't look like I have much of a stroke line around it though. So let's do this. I'm going to increase that. And now you can see what's happening. It puts this outline around it. Now it's crowding in on it. I mean, I could go extreme on this. You can see it's just going to keep filling in the shape with this kind of thick outline. Now, if you did not want the outline, you could come here and go to this little box with a little slash through it, and that would get rid of that outline. Okay. But I kind of like the outline, so I'm going to go Command Z and put that back. Okay. All right. So what do we do with this shape now? We have it, but maybe I didn't like its location. Okay. This up here is the move tool. If I click on the move tool, I can come over here and I click on that and move it. Now, this is where I often see students kind of get a little messed up again. They might not be on the right layer. If I was on the wrong layer and I went to go to move this, notice how it's moving the background. Okay. Command Z, undo that, go back to the right layer. I want to keep demonstrating that, how important that is to be on the right layer. Okay. All right. So let's say this shape, maybe we want to change its size or maybe even rotate it, right? So if we go up to, I believe, edit, transform, free transform path. Okay. Once to do that, note how it put this kind of little line around these little boxes. Okay. Here I can click on the corner and I can now change its shape to augment that. Okay. If I put this up near the corner, notice how I have this bent arrow now. If I click out here and rotate, and now we'll rotate the shape. Now, how do I get this to where it no longer shows this little box? I can't really do anything else. I can't click on another tool. And it's going to ask me, since I want to click on another tool, it's going to tell me, apply the transformation, apply. Now, I'm going to go back and show you another way you can do that. I'm going to go back to edit, free transform path. Now notice what the quick command is on that. Is Command T. You're probably going to want to know Command T and figure that one out, okay? Because that's something we're going to use quite often. Now, I do want to show you one more thing, just so while we have this, as far as how to get out of this tool, right? You can constrain the proportions. So if I click on this and I drag and I do this, I can change its shape and proportions, right? I'm going to Command Z that. And if I hold down the Shift key, press the Shift key, then click on the corner and then go out, notice how it's not following my cursor. It will get bigger and smaller, but it's not going to change its shape. Okay. So All right, so to properly get out of this tool, you can go up here to this little check, and now you're done. Now that tool is done, okay? All right, so I think I might will move that somewhere over here somewhere, okay? All right, so let's play around with some other shapes, okay? How we can make some other shapes and things we can do to other shapes, okay? So if I come down and click on custom shape tool, okay? Now custom shape tool, notice how it's just kind of asymmetrical, organic looking kind of shape. Now if I go over here to shape, I click on that, nope, not that one, sorry, over here with the arrow. Okay, now this arrow is the shape that basically, if we want to make a shape, that's the shape it would make. If I click on this little downward arrow here, it's going to give me all these other shapes I can use. Okay, they're sort of preloaded, kind of clip art, symbolic looking things. I'm going to click on this arrow. Okay, and now I want to make sure and get my colors I want. This time let's do a blue. And oh gosh, look what just happened. It just changed the color of my shape, didn't it? That was unexpected. So let's go back and let's undo that. And now let's create a new layer. So I think that will solve that problem. Okay. All right, so what was I going to select? Blue. Okay. Notice how I didn't change that layer because I was on that layer. That's what happens. Okay. So let's not give it an outline. I'm just going to go with no outline. We're going to do some other things. Okay. So now I'm going to come here and make my shape. Okay. Now notice how it's going like this, and that's because, again, you can kind of make things kind of collapsed and elongate and do different things like that with the shape, which is maybe something you want to do to distort it. And so maybe what if you didn't want to do that though? What if you wanted to have it again constrained? So I'm going to undo that, Command Z. I'm going to start to make this shape by holding the Shift key. I'm going to hold the Shift key, click and drag. Now notice, again, it's just going to get bigger or smaller, but I can't distort its shape. Okay, let me show that again in terms of what the distorted shape looks like. I'm going to Command Z, and now I'm going to make that shape without holding the Shift key, and that's the result of not holding the Shift key. Okay. Now, what if I wanted to change? You can see how this shape is overlapping this shape. What if I wanted to make this shape on top? If I come here to layers and click this layer, I can drag and bring it above. Once that kind of highlights right there, I can release it. So I'm just clicking and holding down one finger on that shape and then using the other finger to just drag it and drop it. Okay. And then I don't like that. I actually like it better the other way. So I'm going to click and hold it, pull it down to where that little line shows up in between, and then put it back where it was. Now you see this little line going through there? That's because this layer is selected. If I go back and select this layer, and then it gets rid of that. It's kind of, whenever you select a layer, it kind of outlines the things that are there on that layer somewhat. All right, so what if for this shape though, I wanted to kind of maybe flip it in the other direction, okay? I think it's an edit, transform path, and then flip horizontally. You can rotate, you can do all those things. So I'm going to flip horizontally, okay? So that's the result, that's what I got. So I'll keep that. Let's move it a little bit though. Actually, let me make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to go Command T. I'll make that a little bigger. Now, if you're making other shapes other than what I'm making right now, that's fine. You don't have to use the same shapes I am, but and you'll have that opportunity later. So remember, I can't click off of this or do anything until I check it. So I'm going to check it. Okay. All right. So let's do some other things. Let's create a new layer. Okay. Let's try a shape by using something like the selection tool. Okay. If I go to this tool, which is the polygon lasso tool, it essentially, if I click and, oh, sorry, if I click, it's going to give me where I clicked at, and then like I'm not holding down anything right now. Okay, it's just there. Anytime I move this, it's going to go in that direction. It starts from that point where I clicked at. So I'm going to click again, and then if I go anywhere else, then now I got like a corner there. Click, and click, and click, and click. And to close this up, I have to bring that right back to where I started, and you can see a little circle show up right there next to that lasso tool, that polygon tool. So if I click there, now I got this dotted line. Okay, that is a selected area. I can fill that in with a color. I can fill it in with a gradient. I can do all those things. Actually, I would like to try a gradient. So I'm going to come here to my bucket tool, select my gradient. These are the colors, which are my background colors. Actually, if I click on that little arrow right there where the colors are that would be in that gradient, I'm going to select one of the color combinations that they have here. So I got this multicolored kind of selection there that would color the inside of that. And I'm going to do a radial. Oh, that's going to look pretty weird. So let's do that. And that's what I got. Okay. And if I want to redo it, maybe I didn't like how that turned out. Now I could go from outside of this, but notice it's only filling what's in that selected area. Okay. I click out here and try to do that, but yet it's only going to put in that area. Okay. So let's say I like that. Now, how do I get rid of this selection, this dotted line? Okay. A quick way to do that is go to Command D. That's going to be a deselect. Now it's deselected. Okay. And if I tried to do a gradient, now it's going to do it over the entire image. Okay. I don't want that. That's not what I want. I'm going to go Command Z. And I just undid that. Okay. All right. So what else can I do to this shape? Okay. We're going to do some pretty wild stuff. Okay. I'm going to go up here to now layer, and where is it at? Layer style. Okay, layer style. I'm going to go to blending options. Now there's another way to get to layer style, and I believe that is down right here. Let me check, see what that says. I'm going to click on that. Is that going to give me? No, it didn't. I thought that was the layer style. Oh, right there it is, the FX. I'm sorry. Okay, FX. So if I go up here and just click on blending options, it pops up this window. Okay. So I'm going to cancel that. I want to show you again. I can get to it also through layer style. I go to blending options. That window pops up. Okay. So either I can go up here to layer, then come down to layer style, or I can come down here to the little FX and click on blending options, and this shows up. Okay. So what all does this do? Okay. I got a lot of options here. Okay. I'm going to go and click on bevel and emboss, and notice how this whole window kind of changed, and it checked that. Or I can, if it's unchecked, it's going to be all blurred out. I can't click or do anything. If I check that, now I have abilities to change these things and make them into different things. Now notice how something interesting has already occurred to our shape over here. Kind of got this light edge and a dark edge because we've got this kind of bevel thing kind of going on here. So emboss, I don't know if I want emboss, but I'll just play with these kind of things, okay? You determine. Now it doesn't look like we're really doing much over here. And actually no, I can't move that right now. Actually, I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to show you that you can decrease and increase the size of this by taking your fingers on your trackpad and bring them together. It'll shrink it, bring them further apart, and it'll increase the size. So spread them apart, you'll zoom in or zoom out, okay? So what I want to do, this was kind of like the pane I was looking at was in the way. So I'm going to, I don't know if I can click and move it. No, sorry. Command Z. I was hoping to be able to move this kind of out of the way. If it's really large, you can. So like this is really large. I can kind of move it around, okay? But when it's so small like this, I can't move it around anymore. The way I was doing that was I was using two fingers to kind of move it around once it was large and filled up the frame. So I was hoping to be able to move it out of the way. Oh, battery's low. So let's just go back to that layer style again. I'm going to go to FX, blending options, bevel and emboss, checked. You can kind of already see an effect there. I'm going to increase the size of that, and then you're really going to see what's happening here, okay? Getting this really interesting light shadow effect. It's kind of making the surface look like as if it's dimensional, and then a light source is striking it. And this kind of gives you a little thumbnail preview of that. I can soften it. Doesn't seem to be doing a lot to it. If I increase the size right there, you determine whatever size you want. Direction, up or down. You can play with that. The depth, you can play with that. Ooh, that gives a little more hard edge there. Technique, chisel hard, soft. Let's see what chisel hard does. Ooh, it makes like a really like a diamond kind of faceted surface, kind of like the smooth a little bit. This guy can change the direction of the angle of the light from which it's coming from. Okay, I kind of liked it where it was. So you can play with any number of these things and kind of watch what it does over here. Then you can undo whatever you want. So let's say we want to keep that. Okay. Now now that we have that, I kind of would like to. Okay, I'm just going to click OK. All right, so there we go. That's pretty cool, right? So let's try that on another one of these shapes. Let's try it on this shape. Okay. Now I'm going to come back down here and select blending options. I'm going to create what's a cast shadow. So drop shadow. Okay. Now not much showed up right there. Okay. It's not happening the way I thought it would. Maybe there's something I'm missing. I don't know if increasing or decreasing that is going to do anything. It does look like there's a little something going on. No. It's basically just making it transparent. That's not doing what I thought it was going to do. I wanted to give it a drop shadow. Maybe I can't do it on that one, so I'm going to hit cancel. I'm going to go back to this shape and try something. Is it doing a drop shadow? No, it is not. It's just making things Well, I practiced before I did this, so well, you can try these different things. Okay, let's do that one. Okay, I'll see if I can practice the cast shadow. So let's go back to this shape right here, okay? And let's give it a texture. That was one of the next things I want to show you. So we can go to pattern overlay. I'm going to click on that and make sure it's checked, and then you can kind of see what it's done to our shape. They don't have a lot of patterns that we can select from, but what we can do is we can increase or decrease the size. So if I go here to scale, I can increase that or decrease it. So if you want to give one of your shapes a texture, I can change the opacity so now it shows more of the color underneath that we colored it with. And let's just say okay on that. Okay, so now we have that in place. All right. One other thing I want to show you. I'm going to create a new layer for this. Now notice how I was on this layer and I clicked a new layer and it just put one. So anytime you're on a layer and you select new layer, it's going to put it just above the layer you were just on. So let's say I want this on the top. I'm going to put that up there. And so let's try doing some sort of free painting. All right, so I'm going to go to sort of the brush tool. Now the brush tool, you'll probably get pretty familiar with the brush tool because I'm probably using it quite a bit. Now with this, if I click on the downward arrow, you can kind of see these different brushes I can get. You know, there's different textures. I guess these are like airbrushes. But the main thing that I go between is either a hard edge or a soft edge brush. Okay, so I'm going to, let's do the soft edge brush, okay, for now. Now, if I come down here, notice how I have a little circle at the end of that arrow. That's telling me how big my brush is going to be. So if I go to make a mark, now this color is what's selected. Let's try a different color. Let's do kind of a pinkish color. Okay, pinkish purple. So if I click and hold and drag, there you can kind of see what's happening. Okay, and then our released. Okay. Now notice how it has this sort of soft edge to it. That's because of the style brush I have. Now what I wanted to show you is how I could increase or decrease that. See how that circle, that brush width is the same size as that circle? That's the width of the brush. Now I can change that a couple of ways. One way is, which is a little more difficult, is you can do this little slider here and increase or decrease the number. And then if you come over here, it will show you kind of, again, that circle will appear and you can kind of see how big that is or how small it is. Now, an easier way is using your keyboard. On your keyboard, right above the return to the upper left of it, you got these little brackets like that, right? If I toggle the one on the left, it's going to make it smaller. If I click the one on the right, it's going to get bigger. Now, one important thing, if this never shows up for you, it may be because your caps lock key is on. If I press my caps lock key, notice how that appears. And I don't see my brush. I could change the size of my brush up or down. I'm pressing those bracket keys and nothing is happening. I can't see that circle anymore to tell how big that brush can be. If I click the caps lock key off, now I'm a brush back. Okay, now that's huge. I'm going to decrease that a little bit. But here, now I can brush around, right? I lag behind a little bit. Now, what if I do like these things, but maybe they're covering up things I don't want to cover up? I can take this layer now and drag it down and put it in between these layers, right? So now I'm overlapping this a little bit. I'm in behind this. Now I got some interesting layered kind of things kind of going on. And that soft edge creates an interesting look next to these kind of hard edges, right? Other things we can do. Again, you can always go back and erase too. I got my eraser tool. And what's interesting about the eraser tool too is it too has, at least I thought, the ability to be hard edged or soft edged. Okay, let me go over here. It looks like it's going to be hard edge. So if I go and erase on this, notice how it's cutting through that and showing the layer underneath. It's not affecting the arrow because I'm not on the layer of the arrow. I'm just on the layer of the brush that I used. Okay. Okay. I think that's it for now. If I think anything else in class, we could try and explore. What I want you to do is you're going to save this, save it to your folder, and we're going to turn that in. This will be your practice. And then what you're going to do is you're going to be free to create your own design using any number of these tools and any arrangement that you want. Okay. I do want you to use certain tools, and I'll talk to you about that in terms of using these, and I'll give you those parameters. Okay. Okay, so I figured out why I wasn't able to get the drop shadow onto one of my shapes. And I'm going to show that as far as why real quick. I'm going to add this to the other recording I created. So, all right, so let's do it to this shape. I'm going to use it on the arrow. Okay, so I need to select that layer. I can tell I'm selected that layer not only by this being highlighted different than the other layers, but also there is a slight little outline around some of this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to the FX. That will get me there, which is the blending options, or I can go up to layer and layer style and blending options there. So again, I'm trying to show you multiple ways in which you can get to a tool, essentially, if you want to call it that. Now, the problem is, this is what I was looking at earlier, and I was trying to do drop shadow. I had drop shadow checked, but I didn't click on drop shadow to see this. So, my mistake. Okay. So now I can start to do things to my arrow, and we can already see a slight little cast shadow right there. All right, so let's do something where you can really see it. So let's go with distance. Boom, there you go, drop shadow. All right, now we're getting drop shadow in there. We can do other things to it, and then we can also see it in the preview over here. I'm gonna go to spread. Oh, I forgot to engage my little arrow here so y'all can see things better. Let's see if I can get that to cut on. There we go, a big green arrow. Now I can point to stuff, maybe you can see it better. So anyway, so I clicked on drop shadow, got the little arrow, got a check, but I had to highlight drop shadow to see my panel here. So, all right, so let's mess with spread a little bit, see what that does. Just kind of bloated it out a little bit. Let's go with size, see what that does. Getting that bloated it out a little bit. Maybe I like it a little sharper. A little feathered out on the edge. Okay. Noise is where you start to get this kind of grainy quality to it. But one thing I also like is doing the opacity, dropping the opacity on it. And that will allow the underneath color to kind of influence that shadow color. And so it brings some saturation of color into it. Maybe I want to push the distance maybe a little bit more on that. Or maybe the size. And maybe drop the opacity just a little bit, make it kind of subtle. There we go. So you can play with some of that. Again, there's other things you can play with, which are these. They're all going to affect kind of how the cast shadow looks. So it's going to give it a different, some kind of weird. So that's the default right there. Okay. So click OK, and there's the drop shadow. Now, the reason on the point of my arrow there is a circle with a slash through it, because with this particular shape, you can see over here how it has this little box around it. The way we created that shape, if we recall, was created through our shape tool. And when you do that, you really can't use any of the other tools pretty much. So just like the eraser tool, I can't erase it. It won't allow it. The shape layer must be rasterized before proceeding. So these shapes, when you make these type of shapes with that shape tool, there's really nothing that can affect it in terms of these other tools pretty much on that same layer. So just like this shape too was created the same way. So I couldn't erase on this or anything. Okay. There is a way to rasterize it. And I guess I'll go ahead and show you that real quick. So if I wanted to take this shape and 2-finger touch, go to rasterize layer, and now you can see how that thumbnail has changed. You can kind of see it's got this transparent background and everything else like the other layers, right? It doesn't have that little box in there. I think that little box means it's kind of like a vector, kind of like an Illustrator. So now it's just pixels, right? So now, if I wanted to, I could go in and erase on that, right? I could use other tools on top of it on that same layer. But I don't want to do that. I'm going to undo that and get that back to the original shape it was, because I like that shape the way it is right now. And one thing I didn't show you, and while I'm recording this video, is I want to show you how to save it. I didn't mention that last video, so I'm going to go to File, and then I'm going to go to Save As. So for this assignment, let's if you recall at the very beginning when we created the canvas, we titled it. So it already has a title, Photoshop Practice, with your first initial, last name. And then I want you to save this to your desktop folder. So you should have created a desktop folder. If not, we can go to desktop, and we'll create a new folder, and Molly, and create. Now, one thing we will have to do is go to Photoshop and change that to a JPEG. Okay, so you save it twice. Actually, let's do that. Let's save it twice. I'll show you how to do that. So in Photoshop, we'll save. So that way we'll save your original. And that's saving. All right, so that is saved now. And then go to File, Save As. And this time we're going to save it. So we're already in that folder, you can tell right there. And that's where that file is. But this time we're going to change it to JPEG. Okay. And you can see it put a copy on there. Didn't realize it was going to do that. Really don't need that. So I'm going to take copy out, because it should have a different extension. It shouldn't like want to overwrite. So I'm going to hit save. And it's asking to replace it. Alright, let's just do this. Shouldn't be doing that though. I have to make another video on this .jpg. Add that to the end, which is what it should have anyway after saving it. And it's going to ask you this, JPEG options as far as quality. Okay. Now, let's check and see about that folder. Let's go to desktop. And let's find my folder. There it is. Click on that, and there are my two files. Okay, one has the .jpg on it, and the other one doesn't. And it should actually. I'm gonna go to. Thought it would give me. Oh, get info. Okay, so this is telling me it's a Adobe Photoshop file. So where's the extension on it? Okay, so it didn't put an extension on it. Okay. Usually it has like a .psd extension on it, whereas the JPEG will have a .jpg. Now here's the difference. If I go to open this in Photoshop, watch what happens. Right here. It doesn't have layers. Okay. It's only one layer. I couldn't go in and rearrange or move any of these layers, or work in between layers, or move them or restack them or anything. Okay. .jpg file compresses things. It makes things a smaller file, and that's the file actually I want you to turn in when you turn in things, because the file size can be quite dramatically different. So let's go back to this again. I'm going to go to File Info. So this file size is 1.6 megabytes. Okay, that's the JPEG. And let me go to the Photoshop file is 23.3 megabytes. Okay, it's like over 20 megabytes bigger. Yeah, a lot bigger. Okay, so that significantly compresses the file size. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Whenever we turn in files, we like to turn in a JPEG. I really wasn't thinking you were going to have to add the .jpg. I thought it did it automatically when you selected .jpg and wouldn't want to overwrite this file, but it did act like it wanted to replace it. So you'll have to go through, I suppose, putting the .jpg on there, but just make sure again that when you go to File, Save As, that you do make sure you select whether or not it's a JPEG or not. Okay, but notice it did put copy, and again I just put .jpg over here. Now think about it, it might be through export. No, okay, so you'll just have to do that. Okay, you'll just have to take out copy, add .jpg at the end, and then save that, and that's the file which you will turn in to me on Canvas. Okay, all right, and that is everything.